Thanks for joining us on the news tonight. We're staying with developments on the proposed tax reform bill, as the presidency has now confirmed that President Bola Tinubu has received the National Economic Council's recommendation that the tax reform bills already sent to the National Assembly be withdrawn for further consultation. In a statement by Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, President Tinubu commends the National Economic Council members, especially Vice President Kashim Shettima and the 36 state governors, for their advice. He believes the legislative process, which has already begun, provides an opportunity for inputs and necessary changes without withdrawing the bills from the National Assembly. He urged NEC to allow the process to take its full course and welcomes engagement with key stakeholders to address any reservations about the bills while the National Assembly considers them for passage. Mr. Onanuga says when President Tinubu set up the Presidential Committee on Tax and Fiscal Policy Reform in August last year, he had only one objective, which is to reposition the economy for better productivity and make the operating environment for investment more conducive. This objective, according to him, remains more critical even today. Joining me for more updates now is TVC News State House correspondent Femi Akonde is live in our Abuja studio. It does seem the president is going ahead with this bill, irrespective of the call by the National Economic Council to have it withdrawn. Walk us through the kind of consultation we saw happen before these four bills were transmitted to the National Assembly.
Well, hi, Nifemi. These four tax reform bills is an executive bill introduced by President Bola Tinubu and sent to the National Assembly. And all of this is also based on recommendations from the chairman of FRS and that Presidential Committee on Tax Reforms inaugurated by President Bola Tinubu, headed by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. Yes, headed by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. So all of this is just, part of President Bola Tinubu's economic reform plans to, overhaul the country's tax operations and tax administration, and, further simplify and harmonize the tax administration in the country to make it easy for, businesses who are overburdened by, these tax obligations to be able to thrive and also make profit while meeting some of these obligations. Well, when it was introduced to the National Assembly, the northern governors, raised concerns over certain clauses in the bill, and it appears as if, they could also get the buy-in of the National Economic Council, whose constitutional position is just advisory, which they did yesterday. What President Bola Tinubu is saying now is, this is not cast on stone, that they should engage the National Assembly. The bill will pass through the first reading, through the second reading, and then there will also be a public hearing. In that process, they can make their inputs. They have representatives from different states in the National Assembly, and they can also prevail on them to ensure that the part of the bill that they do not like can be adjusted, to put into consideration the interest of their people, which they are saying that as it stands right now, the bill may make some parts of the north or some parts of Nigeria disadvantaged because of that derivation-based tax in the clause of that derivation-based tax in the bill. Nifemi.
Well, I'm sure Nigerians are now anticipating to see how these bills will fare at the National Assembly, especially with the reservations expressed by the governors. But it seems the consultation the presidency is talking about will now happen within the window of public hearing. Are there other windows to explore further consultations?
Well, before that bill is brought up for first reading, there will be lobbying on the floor of the National Assembly. We expect the state governors to engage with their representatives, the senators, House of Rep members from the northern region. We expect them to engage with them, and then we expect to see the result of this lobbying, on the floor of the National Assembly when this bill is brought up at plenary. A lot when it's considered clause by clause. A lot of them we expect will raise objections to some of those clauses which the northern governors have identified as being as saying it would be a disadvantage to the north. we expect them to raise objections to that and also make some recommendations in modifying those clauses to suit the purpose for which it was intended. And of course, there's also second reading. If it survives first reading, there will be second reading and then public hearing, where it would be a broader spectrum of stakeholders that will now be involved in giving their own input into how this bill should be shaped and formed. Nifemi.
State House correspondent Femi Akonde live for us in Abuja. Thank you for your input. Elsewhere, Justice Dainde Dikpeolu of the Federal High Court in Lagos has ordered the final forfeiture to the federal government, a cash sum of $2.045 million, a choice property in Lagos and Delta states, as well as 2 share certificates of a firm, all linked to former CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele, on grounds that the properties are reasonably suspected to have been acquired with proceeds of crime. The court held that Mr. Emefiele, despite his arguments through his lead counsel, Olalekan Ojo, that he had purchased the landed property through legitimate means, did not provide any link to the several companies that were found to be the owners, owner of the property. The court said the former CBN governor had instead indirectly denied ownership of those properties. Major General Olufemi Oluyede has formally assumed command of the Nigerian Army as the acting Chief of Army Staff. The acting Chief of Army Staff thanked President Bola Tinubu for his appointment, pledging to hold sway as leader of the Army until such a time the substantive Chief of Army Staff is able to resume the role. Sifon Essien has more.
It's an unusual ceremony. The Chief of Defense Staff says it is necessitated by the absence of the substantive Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Taoreed Lagbaja, who is medically indisposed.
In the interim, based on the powers conferred on the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, he has decided and directed and appointed an acting Chief of Army Staff with the full powers and responsibilities of the Chief of Army Staff until the President decides otherwise. So for us, as professionals, we are to continue with our task ahead. No gap to be left based on the challenges we have in the country. And it's in the wisdom of the President and Commander-in-Chief that today we present the authority to the acting Chief of Army Staff for him to have full control and command of the Nigerian Army.
He provides more reasons for the decision to have an acting Chief of Army Staff and urges officers and men of the armed forces to accept it in the interest of the country.
Nigeria is going through several challenges, especially on security. We need all hands on deck. This is one main reason where the President Commander-in-Chief decided to appoint the acting Chief of Army Staff so that there will be continuity to avoid any gap. We cannot afford to lay back and allow insecurity to continue to prevail.
Major General Olufemi Oluyede is a member of the regular course 39 of the Nigerian Defense Academy. He accepts his appointment as the acting Chief of Army Staff, pledging to continue in that role pending the resumption of the substantive Chief of Army Staff.
My appointment as acting Chief of Army Staff is simply to hold sway while Lieutenant General T. Lagbaja, our Chief of Army Staff, is a way to enable him to take sufficient time to get necessary medical attention and recuperate. And that I intend to do with the whole of my heart.
It's an unprecedented takeover of office for Major General Oluyede. Sifon Essien, TVC News, Abuja.